The lukewarm tea sat untouched in front of Lin Wu. Its subtle floral scent a stark contrast to the bitter taste rising in her throat. Zhou Shanhai, oblivious to her inner turmoil, droned on about the intricacies of his import-export business. Each word he uttered, each self-satisfied gesture, fueled the fire in her gut. She studied him, the expensive suit doing little to mask his bland features, his eyes holding a disconcerting emptiness. He's like a porcelain doll, she thought, all polished surface and no heart. The restaurant, chosen for its supposed elegance, felt suffocating, the hushed tones and clinking silverware amplifying the tension that coiled around her like a viper. It was my stepmother who told you to bring me here for a blind date. I'm not a virgin. Men I've slept with are way more impressive than you. The words hung in the air, stark and uncompromising, a deliberate shatter of the carefully constructed illusion of propriety. A flicker of surprise crossed Zhou Shanhai's face, replaced quickly by a mask of offended dignity. Miss Lin, he stammered, the redness creeping up his neck betraying his discomposure. I was led to believe Lin would watch his discomfort with a detached amusement, a grim satisfaction blooming within her. Believe what? That I was a desperate spinster, grateful for the attention of a man like him. She took a slow sip of the now cold tea, the bitterness a fitting accompaniment to the charade. She had known from the moment her stepmother suggested this meeting that it was a trap. Her stepmother's saccharine smile and carefully chosen words, the subtle emphasis on Zhou Shanhai's wealth, had all pointed to a desperate attempt to pawn her off. Like a damaged vase, hidden in the back of a dusty cupboard, she wondered if her father was aware of his wife's machinations, or if he simply chose to remain blissfully ignorant, as he always did. The thought brought a pang of weariness, a familiar ache that settled deep within her bones. My stepmother has a vivid imagination, Lin Wu said, her voice laced with a sardonic edge that made Zhou Shanhai shift uncomfortably in his seat. She also has a rather flexible relationship with the truth. Zhou Shanhai cleared his throat, his gaze flitting around the restaurant as if searching for an escape route. I wasn't aware, that is. I wasn't informed of certain details. The details Lin Wu knew, being her tarnished reputation, the whispers that followed her like shadows, the leg injury that had shattered her dreams of a dancing career, the whispers of scandal that clung to her like smoke despite her innocence. Mr. Cho, she said, her voice low and steady, let's not waste each other's time. You came here looking for a docile wife, a blank canvas upon which to paint your ideal family portrait. I, on the other hand, have absolutely no intention of marrying, especially not a sterile man. I could have a child outside of marriage and still live better than with you, she added, relishing the tightening of his jaw, the way his eyes narrowed in distaste. Disgusted, are you? She mused. Good. The truth was, she had no immediate plans for a child. But she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing that. He deserved the sting of her words, the humiliation of being rejected so openly. It was a small victory, a fleeting moment of power in a life that had been largely dictated by the whims of others. My sister, however, Lin Wu continued, a sly smile playing on her lips. She's quite the prize, a rising star, beautiful, talented, and soon to be engaged to Zi Yanshen, one of the most eligible bachelors in the city. The mention of Lin Qingqing and her impending engagement shifted the atmosphere, a subtle tension replacing Zhou Shanhai's previous discomfort. He straightened his posture, a flicker of interest sparking in his eyes. Ah, yes, Lin Wu thought, the allure of power and prestige, so predictable. I hear the wedding is going to be spectacular, she added, pouring herself more tea, feigning indifference as she observed his reaction. Zhou Shanhai, caught in the web of her words, began to inquire about the details, his initial embarrassment forgotten in the face of social intrigue. Lin Wu obliged, feeding him carefully chosen morsels of information, each one designed to further inflate his curiosity and solidify his image of Lin Qingqing as the ultimate prize. All the while, a different plan was taking shape in her mind. A plan that involved much more than a simple rejection of an unwanted suitor. A plan that would unravel the carefully woven tapestry of her stepmother's ambition and expose the rotten core beneath its glittering surface. The image of Zi Yanchen flashed through her mind, his sharp gaze, the way he held himself with an air of quiet authority. He's a pawn in this game, just like me, she thought, a strange mixture of resentment and anticipation swirling within her. But perhaps, just perhaps, we can both find a way to right the rules. The taste of the cold tea no longer seemed so bitter. It tasted like the promise of revenge. The aroma of jasmine tea, faint and cloying, permeated the Lin family home. A scent Lin Wu had always associated with suffocating politeness and veiled threats. The porcelain cups, delicate and translucent, trembled slightly on the polished mahogany table as her stepmother's voice, smooth as silk, sliced through the quiet evening. Shanghai is a good catch, Wu. A bit unconventional, perhaps, but his family's wealth more than compensates. Lin Wu traced the rim of her cup, the delicate china cold against her fingertips. Unconventional. That was one word for a man rumored to have contracted every sexually transmitted disease known to modern medicine. Her stepmother's carefully crafted words hung in the air, each syllable laced with a subtle pressure that tightened the knot in Lin Wu's stomach. She knew the unspoken message. A damaged daughter, a dancer with a limb, needed to grab onto any lifeline offered, no matter how tainted. 28. Lin Wu murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, as fixed on the swirling tea leaves in her cup. 28 different infections, each a testament to Zhou Shanhai's reckless disregard for his own body. A body he now expected to miraculously produce an heir with a woman deemed damaged goods. Her stepmother's smile faltered, a flicker of annoyance crossing her perfectly powdered face. 28 what? Dear. Lin Wu lifted her gaze, a flicker of something unreadable in her dark eyes. They say he's had 28 STDs, quite the collection. A beat of silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the rhythmic tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall, each tick a hammer blow against the fragile facade of familial harmony. Lin Qingqing, her younger sister, let out a delicate, tinkling laugh, a sound designed to both dismiss and belittle. Wu, where do you hear these absurd rumors? You and your dramatic flair. Qingqing, always the perfect daughter, the graceful dancer with an unblemished reputation, a pristine offering for the highest bidder. Lin Wu felt a familiar pang of resentment, sharp and acidic, rising in her throat. She swallowed it down, letting a small, self-deprecating smile curve her lips. Just idle gossip. Qingqing, don't mind me. I'm merrily consent. Her stepmother's eyes narrowed, assessing, calculating. Lin Wu knew what she saw. A liability, a potential obstacle to the meticulously crafted plan of marrying Qingqing off to Zi Yanchen, the sign of the prestigious Zi family. A wealthy, powerful man like Zi Yanchen wouldn't tolerate a scandal-ridden sister-in-law. Well, Wu, even if these rumors were true, a stepmother began, her voice regaining its smooth, persuasive tone. Think of the benefits. The Zhou family is influential. They can provide for you. Secure your future. Isn't that what we all want for you? Secure her future. Cage her. More like. Lin Wu's fingers tightened around the teacup, the porcelain smooth and cool against her burning skin. She met her stepmother's gaze, her own expression carefully blank. Of course, mother, I only want what's best. But what if things don't work out with the Zhaos? What if hypothetically, of course there are complications? Her stepmother's eyebrows rose, a hint of suspicion in her eyes. Complications? What kind of complications? Lin Wu hesitated, a carefully crafted look of vulnerability flickering across her face. She lowered her eyes, as if ashamed. Well, let's just say hypothetically there are past indiscretions that might complicate matters. Things that might make a union with the Zhou family difficult. Lin Chinking scoffed. What indiscretions could you possibly have, Wu? You barely leave the house. The barb, though subtle, hit its mark. Lin Wu felt the familiar sting of her sister's casual cruelty, the reminder of her isolation, her diminished status. But this time, the sting was tinged with a perverse satisfaction. She had planted the seed of doubt, the seed of scandal. She lifted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. One never knows, chinking. Life is full of surprises. The unspoken implication hung heavy in the air, a dark cloud threatening to disrupt the carefully orchestrated serenity of the evening. Her stepmother's face paled slightly. The thought of a damaged daughter, a potential scandal, threatened to unravel her carefully laid plans. Wu, she said, her voice sharp. What are you trying to say? Lin Wu met her gaze, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. Just this, mother. Even though Zhou Shanhai has 28 STDSS of the Zhou family comes knocking someday, I'll have to trouble my dearest mum to handle it for me. The words hung in the air. A challenge, a declaration of war. The jasmine tea suddenly tasted bitter, the scent heavy and oppressive. The fragile illusion of familial harmony shattered, leaving behind a raw, exposed nerve of tension. Lin Wu watched her stepmother and sister, their faces a mixture of disbelief and anger, and felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. The game had begun, and she, the discarded pawn, was finally ready to play. The cool night air, scented with the faint perfume of jasmine from the meticulously manicured gardens, did little to soothe the turmoil within Lin Wu. She stood on the threshold of Ziyanshen's opulent residence, the imposing structure a stark reflection of the man himself. Cold, distant, and seemingly impenetrable, her reflection in the polished mahogany door shimmered, a ghost of the dancer she once was. The phantom ache in her leg, a constant reminder of her shattered dreams, pulsed in time with the erratic beat of her heart. Tonight, everything changed. Tonight, she would rewrite the script of her life, even if it meant playing the villain. A servant, his face impassive, led her through a labyrinth of hallways, the silence punctuated only by the click of her heels on the marble floor. Each step felt weighted, each breath a calculated measure. She had rehearsed this encounter countless times in her mind, each variation a desperate attempt to anticipate his reaction. But the truth was, Ziyanshen was an enigma, his thoughts a tightly guarded fortress. He was waiting for her in his study, the room bathed in the warm glow of a single lamp, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock her apprehension. He sat behind a massive desk, his face partially obscured by the dim light, giving him an almost spectral quality. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, a silent battle of wills waged before a single word was uttered. Lin Wu, he acknowledged her presence, his voice a low rumble, devoid of warmth. He didn't rise to greet her, a subtle but deliberate display of power. Ziyanshen, she responded, her voice steady despite the tremor that ran through her. She refused to be intimidated. She had come here with a purpose, and she wouldn't falter. She met his gaze directly, her own eyes reflecting a flicker of the fire within. He was playing a game, and she was determined to play it better. A pregnant silence hung between them, thick with unspoken accusations and hidden desires. He studied her, his gaze sharp and assessing, as if trying to decipher the reason behind her unexpected visit. She knew he wouldn't make it easy. He never did. He preferred the subtle dance of manipulation, the slow burn of anticipation. But she had no patience for such games tonight. My stepmother wants me to marry Zhou Shanhai. She finally broke the silence, The words sharp, clipped. The lie tasted like cash in her mouth. Yet it was a necessary pawn in her game. Inside, a cold knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. This gamble was her only recourse, her last desperate attempt to reclaim control of her life. His expression remained unchanged, but a flicker of something akin to surprise flashed in his eyes. He knew of Zhou Shanhai, of course, everyone in their circle did. The man was a walking embodiment of wealth, yet he carried the invisible burden of infertility, a detail her stepmother conveniently overlooked, blinded by the allure of his fortune. He's sterile, she continued, her voice laced with a carefully crafted blend of disgust and vulnerability. Not a real man, a gilded cage, nothing more. Each word was a calculated strike, designed to chip away at his composure, to force a reaction. She watched him, searching for the slightest crack in his facade. He remained silent, his gaze unwavering, the silence amplifying the weight of her words. She could almost hear the gears turning in his mind, calculating, strategizing. He was a master of control, and she knew she had to push him, to force his hand. Taking a deep breath, Lin Wu delivered her final blow. "How about this?" she proposed, her voice laced with a dangerous calm. "Let's go public. Why don't you just marry me?" The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The silence that followed was deafening. The air in the room seemed to thicken, charged with the sudden shift in power dynamics. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the backdrop of the tense silence. She had laid all her cards on the table, and now all she could do was wait. Wait for his reaction. Wait for the verdict that would seal her fate. His eyes, previously cool and distant, now burned with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. The mask of indifference finally cracked, revealing a glimpse of the turbulent emotions simmering beneath the surface. He was surprised, she could tell, that there was something else there too. Something she couldn't quite decipher. A flicker of interest. Or was it simply amusement at her audacity? He leaned back in his chair, the movement almost languid, as if he had all the time in the world. He steepled his fingers, his gaze fixed on her face, dissecting her, analyzing her every move. She held his gaze, refusing to flinch. This was a battle of wills, and she wouldn't be the first to break. The revelation of her pregnancy, a carefully constructed lie, was her trump card. She knew the scandal it would create, the damage it would inflict on his carefully crafted image, and the leverage it would give her over her stepmother and sister. It was a desperate gamble, a risky maneuver, but she was willing to play the game, even if it meant risking everything. The alternative was a life of quiet desperation, a fate she refused to accept. She was a dancer, not a pawn, and she would choose her own steps, even if they led her down a dangerous path. The crystal chandeliers cast a kaleidoscopic rain of light onto the polished marble floor, each facet reflecting the glittering smiles and murmured congratulations. Lin Qingqing, bathed in the warm glow of the stage lights, accepted her award with a practiced grace, her smile as radiant as the diamond necklace adorning her throat. Lin Wu watched from the sidelines, the applause washing over her like a tidal wave of indifference. Her hand, resting lightly on her abdomen, felt a flutter, a tiny kick against her palm. It was a secret she carried, a weapon she would wield. "She thinks she's won," Lin Wu thought, the corners of her lips curving into a faint smile. "She hasn't even begun to understand the game." The air buzzed with the low hum of conversation as the reception began. Champagne flutes clinked, the sharp, crisp sound echoing through the grand ballroom. Lin Wu's stepmother, her face flushed with triumph, held court amongst a group of admiring socialites, a voice laced with a cloying sweetness. "Qingqing has worked so hard," she declared, her gaze sweeping across the room, landing briefly on Lin Wu. The look was a mixture of condescension and veiled warning. Lin Wu met her gaze, her expression unreadable. "You think this little charade impresses me?" she thought, a bitter taste rising in her throat. "You've played your hand, now it's my turn." Zhou Shanhai, the man her stepmother had so eagerly paraded her in front of, approached with a nervous smile. He fumbled with his tie, his eyes darting towards Lin Qingqing, who was now surrounded by a gaggle of admirers. "Lin Wu," he began, his voice hesitant. "Your sister, she's truly remarkable." Lin Wu felt a surge of contempt. He was a man who valued appearances, a man easily swayed by the glitter and glamour of success. Just the kind of pawn she needed. "Remarkable, indeed," she replied, her voice smooth as silk. "But talent isn't everything, is it?" She allowed her gaze to linger on his for a moment, a hint of something unspoken hanging in the air. "He understands," she thought. "He sees the weakness beneath the facade." Si Yanchen stood apart from the throng, his expression as inscrutable as ever. He watched Lin Wu, his eyes narrowed, as if trying to decipher the secrets hidden behind her composed facade. He'd seen the subtle shift in her demeanor, the flicker of defiance in her eyes. Something was different. Something had changed. "What are you planning, Lin Wu?" he wondered, a strange mixture of apprehension and anticipation coiling in his gut. He felt drawn to her, to the quiet strength that radiated from her, a strength that belied her fragile appearance. The music shifted, the tempo quickening as the dance competition began. Lin Qingqing, radiant in a crimson gown, took center stage, her movements fluid and graceful, capturing the attention of everyone in the room. Lin Wu watched, her fingers tracing the outline of the small jade pendant hidden beneath her dress. A gift from her grandmother, a reminder of a time before the betrayal, before the pain. "This is it," she thought, her heart pounding against her ribs. "This is where I take back what's mine." As the applause for Lin Qingqing's performance died down, Lin Wu stepped forward, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the expectant murmur of the crowd. "Whatever Lin Wu wants, Lin Qingqing wants to," she announced, her gaze fixed on her sister, a challenge burning in her eyes. "I'm going to challenge the winner." A ripple of shock went through the room. Lin Jianren, their father, looked on in bewildered silence, his face pale and drawn. The stepmother's carefully constructed mask of composure cracked, revealing a flash of pure, unadulterated rage. Lin Qingqing's smile faltered, replaced by a look of disbelief, then anger. Lin Wu ignored the whispers and stares, her focus unwavering. She walked towards the stage, each step deliberate, each movement infused with a newfound confidence. The spotlight found her, illuminating her pale face, the determined set of her jaw. The music began, a haunting melody that resonated with the turmoil within her. She danced, not with the polished perfection of her sister, but with a raw, untamed passion that captivated the audience. Her leg, once a source of weakness, now became an instrument of her defiance, each movement a testament to her resilience. "This is my story," she thought, "and I will not be silenced." As the music reached its crescendo, Lin Wu placed her hand on her abdomen, her voice ringing out, clear and unwavering. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths, shattering the illusion of normalcy, exposing the carefully constructed lies. The room erupted in a cacophony of gasps and murmurs. Si Yanchen watched, his eyes fixed on Lin Wu, a storm of emotions raging within him. He felt the strange mixture of anger, betrayal, and admiration. "You've changed the game, Lin Wu," he thought, "and I'm not sure if I'm a pawn or a player anymore." The silence that followed Lin Wu's words was thick enough to choke on. It pressed down on the opulent living room, stifling the delicate scent of lilac and the faint hum of the air conditioning. Her stepmother's carefully constructed mask of composure cracked, a flicker of disbelief crossing her meticulously made-up face. Did she really just say that? The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. Lin Jianren, her father, sat frozen, his gaze darting between his wife and eldest daughter, a helpless plea in his watery eyes. Lin Wu watched them, a certainty in her otherwise steely resolve. She'd played a risky hand, gambling everything on this one desperate move. There was no turning back now. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, the tension escalating with every passing second. Lin Qingqing, her younger sister, stood silently beside Zi Yanchen, her beautiful face contorted in a mixture of shock and barely concealed rage. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms, leaving crescent-shaped marks. Lin Wu could almost taste her sister's fury, a bitter tang on her tongue. Kid, she thought, a flicker of malice warming her. Let her feel the sting of uncertainty, the fear of losing everything she holds dear. The confrontation spilled out of the stifling confines of the living room and into the car, then to the sterile, antiseptic environment of the hospital. The hushed whispers, the hurried footsteps of nurses, the pervasive smell of disinfectant, none of it registered in Lin Wu's mind. Her focus remained laser-sharp, fixed on the objective. She would not break. Not now. At the hospital, the charade continued. Her stepmother's manipulations became more frantic, more desperate. Whispered conversations with doctors, veiled threats, promises of a solution, all designed to silence Lin Wu, to erase the inconvenient truth she'd revealed. Lin Wu met each attempt with a cool defiance, her gaze unwavering. She'd spent years trapped in their web of lies and deceit. Now, she was finally breaking free. This is madness, Lin Wu, her stepmother hissed, her voice low and urgent, as they waited outside the examination room. You're ruining everything. Qingqing's happiness, your father's reputation, everything. The desperation in her voice was almost palpable. Lin Wu felt a flicker of pity, a fleeting understanding of the fear that drove the woman. But it was quickly extinguished by the memory of her own pain, the years of neglect and manipulation. Inside the examination room, the ultrasound technician moved the transducer across Lin Wu's abdomen. The grainy black and white image on the screen flickered, then solidified. A tiny, pulsing form came into view. The sound of the fetal heartbeat filled the room, a steady, rhythmic thump against the silence. Lin Wu felt a strange tightness in her chest, a mixture of fear and an unexpected surge of protectiveness. There it is, the technician said, her voice neutral, professional. Congratulations, you're about 8 weeks along. Lin Wu's gaze remained fixed on the screen, the reality of her situation sinking in. A life growing inside of me. The thought was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. The confirmation of the pregnancy was the final blow, shattering the fragile facade of normalcy her stepmother had so painstakingly constructed. The woman's face crumpled, her carefully applied makeup unable to mask the despair in her eyes. Lin Qingqing's reaction was more volatile. A shriek ripped through the sterile silence of the examination room, followed by a torrent of accusations and recriminations. You liar! You manipulative bitch! You did this on purpose. Lin Wu met her sister's fury with a chilling calm. I'm pregnant, she repeated, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. Yours. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Then, the dam finally broke. The carefully constructed lies, the hidden resentments, the years of suppressed anger. It all came pouring out. She and Zhu Hui. Lin Wu's voice was low, trembling with barely contained rage. She and Zhu Hui together killed my mum. The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Lin Jianren stared at his wife, his eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. I'm not making anything up. Lin Wu's voice cracked, her carefully constructed composure finally fracturing. The memories, vivid and painful, flooded her mind. The hushed whispers, the suspicious circumstances surrounding her mother's death, the subsequent accident that had crippled her leg. All the pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. She looked at her stepmother, at the dawning realization in the woman's eyes, and knew, with chilling certainty, that she'd finally hit her target. The truth, once spoken, could not be unsaid. It echoed in the sterile confines of the hospital room, a stark and brutal counterpoint to the rhythmic thump of the new life growing within her. The power dynamics had shifted, irrevocably. Lin Wu, the discarded daughter, the injured dancer, now held the winning hand. The game, it seemed, had just begun. The opulent ballroom, moments ago buzzing with celebratory chatter, now hung heavy with a stunned silence. Crystal chandeliers glittered ironically over the wreckage of Lin Xinking's meticulously planned engagement party, reflecting the shattered fragments of her dreams onto the polished marble floor. Lin was stood amidst the debris, her hand protectively cradling her still flat stomach, a faint tremor running through her. The words she'd uttered hung in the air, thick and suffocating like the expensive perfume worn by the socialites now staring at her with a mixture of shock and disdain. "I'm pregnant." For real, her voice, though quiet, had carried an undeniable power, slicing through the facade of polite conversation and revealing the festering secrets beneath. She hadn't planned it, not exactly. It was a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort to reclaim some semblance of control. But as she looked at the faces around her, her stepmother's mask of composure cracking, Lin Xinking's eyes blazing with betrayal, her father's bewildered helplessness, a flicker of grim satisfaction ignited within her. Lin Xinking's carefully constructed world had crumbled, her perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms, the sharp pain a welcome distraction from the burning humiliation spreading through her. How could Lin Wu do this to her? How dare she? This wasn't just about Zi Yanchen, though the thought of him, of his touch, now belonging to someone else, clawed at her insides. It was about everything. The years of living in Lin Wu's shadow, the constant comparisons, the simmering resentment that had festered within her since childhood. Lin Wu, with her damaged leg and her defiant spirit, had always possessed a peculiar magnetism, attracting attention even when she seemed to repel it. Now, she had stolen the ultimate prize. Lin Xinking's gaze darted towards Zi Yanchen, searching his face for any sign of denial, of disgust, anything to cling to. But his expression was unreadable, a carefully constructed wall that gave nothing away. Zi Yanchen felt the weight of 100 scrutinizing eyes upon him, each silently demanding an explanation. His initial shock had quickly given way to a chillingly calm assessment of the situation. He had anticipated Lin Wu's defiance, her refusal to be a pawn in their game. He had even, in some perverse way, admired her spirit, but this was a game changer. He glanced at Lin Wu, her fragile frame appearing even smaller amidst the opulent surroundings. Her defiance had a price she might not be prepared to pay. He felt a strange, unfamiliar tug in his chest, a sensation that had nothing to do with the social and financial ramifications of this revelation, and everything to do with the woman standing before him, vulnerable yet unyielding. "The baby in Lin Wu's belly, I'll take responsibility," he declared, his voice cutting through the murmuring crowd. The words reverberated through the room, silencing the whispers and gasps. His stepmother's face, momentarily frozen in disbelief, twisted into a grotesque parody of a smile. "Yanchen, you must be joking," she stammered, her voice laced with a desperate plea. This is all a misunderstanding." Lin Jianren, perpetually caught in the crossfire of his wife's ambitions and his daughter's conflicts, looked from one face to another, his eyes filled with confusion and a hint of fear. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, the unspoken words dissolving into a helpless sigh. The whispers started anew, gaining momentum like a gathering storm. Lin Wu watched the scene unfold, a strange detachment settling over her. She had anticipated the outrage, the accusations, the inevitable attempts to control the narrative. But she hadn't anticipated Ziyanshan's response. His words, seemingly simple and straightforward, echoed in her mind, a strange mix of relief and apprehension washing over her. Responsibility. What did that word even mean in this tangled web of deceit and desire? She met his gaze across the room, searching for an answer in the depths of his inscrutable eyes. The subtle shift in his expression, the almost imperceptible softening of his features, didn't escape her notice. As the initial shock began to wear off, the room buzzed with renewed energy, the whispers evolving into open speculation. Lin Qingqing, unable to contain her fury any longer, lunged towards Lin Wu, her voice shrill with accusation. "You liar! You manipulative!" Her words were cut short by Ziyanshan's hand on her arm, a gentle yet firm restraint that held a surprising power. "Qingqing," he said, his voice low and controlled, "let's discuss this privately." He turned towards Lin Wu, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Come with me." Lin Wu hesitated, her mind racing. This wasn't how she had envisioned things. The sudden shift in power dynamics, the subtle yet palpable change in Ziyanshan's demeanor, disoriented her. She had expected anger, rejection, perhaps even disgust. Instead, she found herself facing a different kind of danger. A danger cloaked in concern, in responsibility, in an unsettling intimacy that threatened to unravel her carefully constructed defenses. She followed him, her heart pounding against her ribs, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air between them. As they moved through the parting crowd, the whispers followed them, clinging to their backs like shadows. She knew this was just the beginning. The real battle had just begun. The crisp red of the marriage certificate felt oddly cold against Lin Wu's fingertips. The embossed gold characters, proclaiming her union with Ziyanshan, seemed to shimmer, a mirage in the stark reality of the registry office. She glanced at Ziyanshan, his profile etched against a frosted glass window, a study in quiet contemplation. He hadn't spoken since they'd left the Lin family home. The echoes of her stepmother's wails, and Lin Qingqing's heartbroken sobs still ringing in Lin Wu's ears. A bitter satisfaction twisted in her gut, a dark counterpoint to the unsettling flutter in her chest. This victory, hard-won and laced with deceit, felt more like ashes than triumph. Had she truly won, or simply traded one cage for another? The thought, sharp and unwelcome, pricked at the fragile composure she'd carefully constructed. Ziyanshan turned, his gaze meeting hers, an unreadable depth in his dark eyes. "Let's go." His voice, a low rumble, held no trace of the turmoil that had just ripped through the Lin family. Lin Wu nodded, ducking the certificate into her bag, the small, rectangular shape a tangible weight against her side. As they stepped out into the biting winter air, Lin Wu shivered, not entirely from the cold. She had gambled everything on this, her future, a reputation, even the fragile tendrils of affection she'd begun to feel for the man beside her. Was it a gamble she would ultimately regret? The car ride was a silent testament to the unspoken tension between them. Each streetlight that flashed by illuminated the hard planes of Ziyanshan's face, the subtle clench of his jaw. Lin Wu stared out the window, the city lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of color, each vibrant streak a stark contrast to the grey landscape of her thoughts. She replayed the scene at the Lin family home, the calculated reveal of her pregnancy, her stepmother's face contorting in disbelief, Lin Qingqing's carefully crafted facade crumbling into a mask of raw despair. A fleeting pang of guilt, quickly suppressed, tugged at her conscience. Lin Qingqing, despite her manipulations, had been genuinely in love with Ziyanshan. Lin Wu, On the other hand, what were her feelings? A tangled web of resentment, ambition, and a burgeoning, unsettling attraction she couldn't quite decipher. The car stopped in front of a small, unassuming restaurant. Si Yanchen opened the door for her, the gesture almost mechanical. Inside, the aroma of ginger and rice porridge filled the air, a comforting warmth against the chill that seemed to have settled deep in Lin Wu's bones. They sat in a quiet corner, the silence punctuated only by the gentle clinking of utensils from nearby tables. A steaming bowl of porridge was placed before Lin Wu. She picked up the spoon, the porcelain smooth against her fingers, and took a tentative sip. The sweetness of the rice, the subtle hint of ginger, warmed her from the inside out. The porridge is sweet. I really like it, her voice, barely a whisper, hung in the air between them. She looked up at Ziyanshen, her gaze locking with his. I remembered now, the one who always protected me, who never left my side, was never Fu Xingjian. It was you. The words, once spoken, hung heavy in the air. A confession she hadn't intended to make. She saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Surprise, relief, perhaps even tenderness. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the familiar mask of composure. He simply nodded, his gaze unwavering. Eat, you need your strength. His words, though practical, held a subtle undercurrent that resonated with Lin Wu. It wasn't love, not yet, but perhaps a beginning. Later, as Ziyanshen dropped her off at her small apartment, Lin Wu hesitated before getting out of the car. Thank you, she murmured, the words inadequate to express the complex emotions swirling within her. He nodded again, his expression unreadable. Get some rest, as she climbed the stairs to her apartment. The weight of the day pressing down on her, Lin Wu found herself thinking, not of Ziyanshen, but of her father, Lin Jianren, a man often overshadowed by the forceful personalities of his wife and younger daughter, had surprised her with a quiet moment of understanding amidst the chaos. He had simply held her hand, his grip surprisingly firm, and whispered, "Be happy, Lin Wu." The words, devoid of judgment or recrimination, had resonated deeper than any grand gesture. Perhaps, she thought, amidst the wreckage of her past and the uncertain landscape of her future, there was still a chance for something genuine, something more than just calculated moves and strategic victories. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for forgiveness, for healing, even for family. The following days brought a strange sense of calm. Lin Qingqing, after a dramatic outburst, had retreated, her pride wounded, her ambitions thwarted. The stepmother, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her, seeped in quiet resentment. Lin Jianren, however, seemed to have found a newfound strength. He started asserting himself, subtly at first, then with increasing confidence. He began spending more time with Lin Wu, small gestures of affection replacing years of neglect. He would bring her her favorite tea, sit with her in companionable silence, or simply offer a gentle smile. These small acts, once so foreign, began to fill a void Lin Wu hadn't realized existed. The power dynamics within the Lin family had shifted irrevocably. Lin Wu, once the discarded daughter, now held the reins, her pregnancy a silent but potent symbol of her newfound influence. She hadn't planned it this way. Not exactly. Life, she was beginning to realize, rarely followed a script. The future stretched before her, an uncharted territory filled with both promise and uncertainty. But for the first time in a long time,